Hi guys, my name's Tima and welcome to another episode. Joining me today is another special guest from Flambard Williams, Ben Brewer. Now, in the office, Ben is considered to be a bit of the David Attenborough. His knowledge doesn't only expand over the property industry, but over a variety of different topics as well. So, Ben, welcome and thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks. I've never had an introduction like that before.
I hope that's a good thing.
Never been described as David Attenborough, but yeah, I'll take it.
Amazing. Well, listen, I thought that we would have you on here today, not only to sort of pick your brains, but also to learn a bit more about the Ben out of office. So let's start. You probably know the drill by now, but I want you to introduce yourself to everyone.
Okay. What do you want to know? Yeah, I'm Ben. One of the sort of senior guys at Flambard Williams. Been there a number of years now. So yeah, it's pretty much me in a brief nutshell.
Okay, well, we're going to dig a bit deeper into that. So, guys, you're going to learn something new about him today, I hope. So I've got a few questions that I've sort of compiled for you, Ben, and they're not only going to be property focused. The main goal here is to get to know you a bit more about who you are outside. So, Ben, let's start off a bit lighthearted, as usual. So you're one of the longest reigning sort of team members at Flambard Williams. Yeah. What I'd like to know is, how did your journey at Flambard Williams start?
It's a really good question. It's been, like I said, a number of years. So the team has expanded massively since I first started a few years back. We've moved offices a few times. Mm-hmm. We've grown offices size-wise, team-wise. Yeah, it's been a lot of changes. So I started with the company in late 2020, early 2021, something like that. Sort of the back end of COVID. And yeah, it was a strange time, obviously, for everyone, really. Yeah. But so yeah, we were in Bank Street in Canary Wharf. Okay. And the team was, at the time, I think there was only about 7 of us maybe at one stage. Gosh. Yeah, and then more additions. Then we sort of had like a bit more back office staff, more brokers, and then we moved then into where we are now. Mm-hmm. And then the team sort of split into 2 or 3 at the time. So then there's like me, and then Ricky, and then our teams and stuff. So yeah, it's been a journey, but yeah, it's grown a huge amount since I started.
Yeah, sounds it. I'd love to sort of. I said this last week, but I'd love to see like a timeline of where you guys were and sort of where we are now.
Yeah, it's totally different. It's totally different.
Fair enough. And were you always keen to get into property, or was it something that sort of happened quite unexpectedly?
It's always been in the back of my mind. It's one of those where I've been in various different industries, but always been in sort of sales and various different investments, things like that, and other industries. But even when you're a young kid, you know, everyone talks about property as being the safe bet. Do you know what I mean? Everyone knows that your family home will have gone up in value. Your parents would have either, you know, gone and bought bigger properties over the years, and you've obviously heard other people's stories about how they started with something small and then you know, grown over time. So it's always been an area that has intrigued me, but yeah, I didn't expect it to be quite as in depth as I am with it now.
Yeah. It's. I feel like it's what everyone sees is sort of the tip of the iceberg. There's so much that we kind of dive into, isn't it? And I know you said it's not the typical way, or you've not heard yourself being introduced that way, but you know, amongst the guys in the office, we look to you sort of as a knowledge tycoon. So let's sort of go back to your childhood. Were you always sort of surrounded with sort of knowledge-driven individuals, your family, your friends, or was it something that you kind of, I don't know, just started to grow yourself?
I don't know. Yeah, so I've not been asked that before. I find things interesting. So if I don't know something, I find it interesting. I want to know more about it. And I'm just lucky. I think I've got one of those memories where, you know, it'd be like an elephant. It just sort of sinks in. Yeah. Most of it's totally useless. But you know, you get the odd bit of snippet of decent information that you can retain, and then the good thing is sometimes you can pass that on and help the younger guys come through.
Yeah, I guess so. But would you say that sort of your passion? It doesn't have to be sort of property focused, but your passion for learning, would you say it started quite early on, or was it when you started to dive into the property industry and you realised there's so much to learn that you started to get, you know, knowledgeable?
Definitely something like I'm always intrigued into what's going on in the world at any given time, especially with things that have gone in really recent history, economically wise, in terms of what's going on with the government, what's going on with the country, with various other different countries and things like that. So I always want to know, always keep my finger on the pulse sort of thing. And then when the property sort of element came into it, I mean, you know what the job's like, right?
Yeah.
It's so in depth and you have to know so much information, but it's not, like I said, it's not about how much information you can hold on to. It's about how you can sort of explain it to other people.
You get down a rabbit hole, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, I have to say, yeah, it's definitely something that, yeah, you always see me watching the news or keeping up to date with something that's going on.
Well, we don't flick the news guys. We just say, Ben, hey, what do you think?
Yeah.
But no, it's completely true, especially with the role that we're in. But I love that it's something you've always had. I think that's really nice. And let's kind of focus it a bit more onto the property market, right? We'll be jumping between the two, but would you say that it's important to keep up to date with not only the current market trends, but to also kind of educate yourself on what's happened before?
From a broker or from a client perspective?
Both, just anyone who's sort of interested in the property world.
I think it's really hard to. I think what we found and what I found, especially speaking with clients over the years, is the media and the news, just in general, they never want to give you good information. So it's quite hard to find good quality information that's reputable, that you can trust. So from a broker side of things, especially in this industry, we have to know about trends, market trends, where the hotspots are, what's going on in terms of legislation, what's going on in terms of the market, all that good stuff that we do day in, day out. But if you're interested in the property market, the hard thing is to being able to find out, like, see the wood through the trees. Yeah. So, you know, you can even look at yourself, you know, you look at, like, take Liverpool, for example. It's so obvious what's going on there, but you could look at 4 different news articles and they'll tell you 4 different things. Yeah. So trying to find out what's true is really difficult. But of course, yeah. I mean, if it's something you want to get into, the more knowledge you've got, the better it's going to be. Yeah. But yeah, my advice would just be to speak to as many people as you can and try and figure out who's trustworthy. I think that's going to be the main thing to do.
Yeah, trust is a key element. I think it's one of the biggest things we try to put across with all of our clients, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
Starting off with trust. And then would you say come second maybe? I mean, this was what would have been my first answer, but would you say come second is the area that they are investing on? Is that necessarily important, or does it not matter where they put their money?
It's a tough one, right? Because, like, we advise people to stay away from London, right? As a bit of a general rule. Yeah. But if something came up in London that was 20-25% below market value, still a good investment. It might not be in an area that's going to be, you know, it's going to grow in value dramatically over the next 5, 10, 15 years. Sure. If it's, you know, you're getting a massive amount of money off, it still works. So it's not necessarily the areas per se, it's more the actual property itself. However, if you're going to go, let's say everything's the same price, let's say that all the tenants are the same, just like level the playing field in that respect, area's massive. It's obviously one of the biggest factors, because if you've got the wrong location, you've got the wrong tenant. You've got the wrong location, you've got the wrong growth level, you've got it changes everything. So yeah, areas is good, but I think it will still all boil down to what you want. Yeah. Out of the investment, I think that's going to be key. So of course, if it's growth, you want areas. If it's income, you want to start changing just slightly how you do lettings, things like that. But that's what we do, just tweak everything. Yeah, exactly. It's like every client we speak to, we give them sort of a bespoke sort of investment plan, isn't it? Try to. Oh. Sort of what we're here for. Yeah, exactly. And would you say, we're going to draw it back to you. In the time that you've been at Flambard Williams, what areas would you say have sort of gained the most attention, investment-wise? I think Manchester's the biggest one that everyone talks about. I think the easiest way of explaining that is, as soon as you Google investment properties or you Google, you know, what's happened, that's the first place that comes up. Right? It will be every single time. The reason for that is it was the first place that really started to see any dramatic change. So that's going to be the area that people talk about. So they've gone, property prices have just shot up in this particular area. So that's the one everyone sort of has heard of. What a lot of people don't realise is that's still great, but there's other places that are sort of Manchester 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. So yeah, that's going to be the areas really to focus on as well. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, Manchester and Liverpool, North in general, isn't it? It's just everyone's going on about it for the right reasons. Of course. And let's say we can focus on areas still, I think, for now. Is there a region of the country that took you by surprise growth-wise, a city that you maybe thought, hey,
didn't expect it to grow that fast, or didn't expect anyone to focus on it regeneration wise?
Yeah, I think Bristol.
Oh yeah.
So, well,
I
yeah,
agree.
because we, like you say, so religious that we've been looking at, like, the north and other areas like Blackpool as well. Just you hear it as a kid, don't you? Like Blackpool Towers.
Yep.
Dive. It's an area to avoid. But what is going to be happening there is fantastic. But and like I say again, avoiding places like the south. But then if you can see a huge amount of money being spent on an area, it's still going to work. It just depends on price point.
It's true. Yeah, Bristol is one that I feel like we've spoken about so much this month in the office, but I don't know. I feel like it's exciting. I'm excited for my clients to get into Bristol personally.
Yeah.
Would you say that would there be something that you would advise against for any new client who's looking to invest in a city?
God, that's a good question. It's all down to comfort levels, right? From my experience, I think what people do a lot of is A, over research, B, they speak to too many people. So I know I said it 10 minutes ago or whatever, speak to people. Definitely speak to people. Don't get me wrong. Like, don't just take our word for anything.
Yeah.
You need to speak to people. But what I'm seeing a lot more of these days is people speaking to 5 to 10 different agents.
Yeah.
Then they're friends that have invested in property 20 years ago. Someone that's bought some property in East London that seemed to have done all right a while back. The problem you're going to have then is you've got such conflicting ideas and conflicting information that it will just kill you. You won't know which way to turn. So the more unsure you are, the more nervous you are, the more likely you are to make a mistake. That's the easiest thing. So don't be cavalier, but also don't be nervous. You can't really go wrong with property. Like you're not gonna mess it up too badly. I think is probably the thing I would say don't do.
Yeah, that makes sense, and it goes back to what you said before about the whole trust. If you again. Your broker is here to help you, isn't it? So you do have to trust us, but at the same time, if you do it yourself, it can be overwhelming. So I completely
You don't
agree.
have to trust us, by the way, guys. Like, just
try to. We try.
No,
to.
no, but it's like, yeah, you don't. No one has to trust anyone. It's give them the time to then if we can prove that we're trustworthy, we're worth trusting.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's it. I wouldn't just walk in and be like, oh, I'm sure you.
Oh no, that's not right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What he's saying, guys. But no, I completely agree. And then let's say, I don't know, we as a company, we do travel quite a bit. We try and go around to each city that we're sort of talking about and so on. Would you say that, traveling around the UK, not as a whole, around the UK was something that you were passionate about growing up, or it could even be just travel in general?
Yeah, I always like getting out and seeing new places. I've been quite lucky over the years. I've been to sort of weird and wonderful places. And it's funny when you do go to these cities. So like Derby will be completely different to Liverpool. You got a completely different landscape. So going and seeing what they're actually like, and then over time seeing how they've changed. So like 4 or 5 years ago, whenever I started going up to Manchester, now compared to what it's like, was back then, it's mad. Like you go up there every few months and there's another building popped up.
It's true.
Like it's completely different. So yeah, I do love going up and seeing it all. And it also gives you a bit more belief as well. So when you're speaking to people, especially like clients that are overseas that don't get to go and see it all, when you've got you've got utter confidence in these projects and the areas that we're looking at, and they know that they're a complete fit for these people. Like it's definitely it gives you confidence as a broker that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, no, 100%. I always love traveling around as well. I feel like it's so exciting to get out of the office a little bit.
Yeah, there's definitely always that. Yeah.
What would you say, Ben, is the biggest lesson that you've learned from traveling to these different cities? Like as a broker, getting out of the office and going to the different cities over a period of time.
Don't judge a book by its cover is probably the one thing I would say. Stereotypes, especially in terms of areas, are completely wrong. Like, going back, funny enough, I was talking to someone about this today. Birmingham, right, has got a bit of a reputation, just as a general rule. It's a big city. There's, with any city, you're going to have levels of crime, blah, blah, blah. It's obviously the worst in London.
Yeah, of course.
What a lot of people will assume is that these places don't have the wages, or they don't have the sort of the cultural element, or they don't have the money that you do in London.
Okay.
There's a Coutts Bank in Birmingham. You know, it's the HSBC, the head office of HSBC is now in Birmingham. Like, these places are so far more advanced than people think that they are. And, you know, they get a bit of a reputation. They hear things from 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
It's completely different.
No, it's true. I think that's the thing about, you know, doing your research, educating yourself. But yeah, I like that. Don't judge a book by its cover. And let's take it back to you. You know, you've sort of climbed, you've climbed the ranks as you've been here. You've now got a team behind you.
Yeah.
So would you say that there's a bit of added pressure, or you feel a bit of added pressure to sort of make sure you're up to date with the times and the knowledge, so that, you know, you can pass that down to them?
No, I love it. It's a totally different way of looking at it. I've had teams in the past, in previous jobs, previous roles.
Yeah.
This one's completely different because, you know, the guys are good, right, as well.
Yeah.
It's, you know, they're all really passionate. You know, you're not walking on a Monday morning trying to psych everyone up. Everyone's already in a good mood, right?
Exactly.
So that's half the battle. But yeah, I really enjoy it, especially when you start to coach people and they start to get it from themselves. It's like having, it sounds cliche, it's like having kids, right? I don't even have any kids, so it doesn't make a huge amount of sense. But it's no, it's really good, and especially as they start to progress through and they build their confidence, and then they start getting a little client base, and their clients.
You're like a proud dad.
I am a little bit, yeah. I am a little bit.
You're not like this in the office. They're going to love listening back to this.
Yeah, I'll get the whip out. No, I love it. I don't feel any pressure from it at all. I mean, you know, it's very rare that we do badly as a company because, you know, we've got an extensive following. So it's, you know, it's not like a startup company in itself. It's not like that at all. So don't get me wrong. Chris likes to give me a phone call every now and again just to make sure I'm doing what I should be doing. But yeah, no, it's fine. I love it. Yeah,
and do you have any sort of, you don't have to tell us if it's giving secrets away, but do you have any aspirations for your team or what you're trying to, you know, a direction you're trying to take them in?
Yeah, it's a good question. Grow it is number one. Cool. You know, get it bigger. It's pretty much in line with what the company wants, right? We want to get out there, get bigger, make sure that, you know, we're sort of expanding into different things. You know, we've obviously got Nico, Wilco.
I was going to say Nico.
Nico, there we go. Wilco, things like that you know, the company want to get into and start really sort of progressing with. And it's the same for my team. I want to build the team, you know, get them a little bit self-sufficient so they don't rely on me or Jack or Chris or anything like that. They know what they're doing. And then over time, look, there's plenty of options for us. I think, you know, there's talks of various different things that I can't tell you about.
TBC, guys.
Yeah. But yeah, number one is just build it as much as I can to begin with.
Yeah, I feel like as well your team, I mean, I love my team, but I feel like you can tell how confident they are in their team leader. It's like you can see how they look up to you and so on. So
yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
they're quite close knit as well, the guys.
That is, isn't it? It's kind of like a little family in there. So yeah, proud dad moment.
That's right. They get told when they're doing it wrong.
Yeah, you know, it's a bit scary. Let's kind of take it back to the property industry as a whole. Yeah. Right? You're really experienced. You're obviously constantly growing and learning, as we all are. But if there was one thing that you could change, Ben, about the industry that we work in, if anything, what would it be?
I think it's navigating all the old crap, right? If I'm honest, like especially with places like Liverpool, like the older cities, that there were a few cowboys out there back in the day. You know, they built some shoddy stuff.
Yeah.
Like things like the cladding, you know, things like that. It gives it a bad reputation, right? Is the long and short of it. You get a lot of people that have gone out on their own, bought some property that isn't quite doing what they should be doing. Things like that. So that's really one thing that, you know, I wish didn't exist, but again, we can get around it. We can sort these issues out.
Yeah.
And also, like, our industry gets hammered, like, in the news.
Yeah.
We can't put a foot right. But it's the total opposite. The reality is completely different from the truth. But nothing major. You know, I think it's an exciting industry to be in. And when you look at things like, the easiest one in sort of like recent memory is things like Stratford, right? And like where the Olympics was.
Yeah.
Stratford, like when I was growing up, you didn't walk around there. Like,
bit of a dump.
Oh, mate, it was horrendous. No offense to anyone who lives there, by the way, or has lived there.
But it's the truth. But they're building it up.
But then, yeah, exactly. So since the Olympics, it's completely changed the landscape, right? And it's now an area where people want to live and they want to, you know, they want to bring the kids up. There's schools there. There's shopping centres. There's everything that you're ever going to need. And that area was you as a no-go zone before. So our industry it brings life to things like that. So, yeah.
Do you think that the property market is going down, Ben?
I love these types of questions, right?
Quiz.
Reason being, before I get into a bit of a tangent, there's a lot of opinions out there, right? And in terms of what we get asked from existing clients, new clients, brokers, people in the industry, mortgage brokers, accountants, whatever, it doesn't really matter. We get asked it all the time. The reason we get asked it is because of things that are in the news, right? So if you read the Daily Mail, you're going to think that things are the end of the world's going to happen, right? Because the news in the media is always going to sell news. It needs to be bad news, right?
Of course.
The problem with opinions is they get very confused with fact. Now, you cannot get away from the data. Now, the property market, I think pretty much you can pick any 5-year period since the Second World War with property in the UK, and over that 5-year period, property values have gone up on average across the board. So you can even pick the financial crash in 2008. You could gone and bought a property in 2007. You could have then the next 18 months it went down 15%. By 2012, that property would have been worth more than 2007. So, and over a 10-year period, I'm pretty sure I'm guessing the numbers here, but I'm not joking. I think it's 5% on average every year over a 10-year period. It can't go the opposite way. It's not impossible, but the chances of that happening are very, 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 very slim. A lot of fundamental things have to go wrong. So liquidity has to be a problem, legislation has to be a problem. Since 2008, it's incredibly unlikely that's going to happen again. Even if it does, it's not going to drop 15, 20, 25, 30%. Like, some numbers are being tossed around. Like it's ridiculous. Some things can be changed. So there are some areas that are a little bit more susceptible. So areas like London, because if you think about the average property price in London is what, the minute 525, 523. If you think about a first-time buyer, they with a residential mortgage, they can only go and get, at the moment it's changing, but say 4.5 times their annual salary. Let's say they're on 50, 60 grand a year. They cannot get enough of a mortgage to only put a 10% deposit down. They just won't be allowed to lend enough money. Now, as soon as those interest rates start to creep up a little bit further, which they have done a couple of years ago, all of a sudden those properties become unaffordable, right? So the market then doesn't move. So your first-time buyers don't become second-time buyers, third-time buyers moving forward. When you look at areas like the north of England, which showed completely the tail opposite end of what happened in London, it's a completely different set of circumstances. So you've got a much lower average property price. So you're looking at early 2000s, 200,000s, but also there's extensive regeneration projects. So the affordability's there. The average wage actually isn't that far away from London these days. So
it's true.
People can afford the properties. They can also afford the slight jump in interest rates, and combine that with economic changes, population increases, all of the stuff, the good stuff that makes the property market move forward, is all happening. So when you combine that with an average across the country, last year was 4% growth, 5% across the country. And then, when you start at the beginning of last year, when, you read even the Telegraph, you read Daily Mail, you read pretty much everything other than the Times, they're going to tell you that the property market's going to crash. But let's be honest, the last 2 years they've been saying it, still hasn't happened. So
they need readers. No shade, but
exactly.
They do.
There you go.
All right, I love that. So something that is a question that's very, very popular, not only in our office, but on the news as well. In our office, we get often asked, why do we only focus on UK property market? So UK versus overseas investments, what do you have to say about that?
That's a good question. As you know, we get, 50, 60% of our clients are overseas.
Yeah, I think it was around 59 last time.
Yeah, it's high, right? Why do you think that is? And it's not because, they want a second home in the UK. The weather just doesn't cut it. Yeah. It's we're not talking about Dubai levels of weather here.
No.
It's the stability in the UK. You don't get that in pretty much any other market. If you look at things like Spain, the market there is about to fall apart because of second property tax at being 100%. You look at things like Portugal, where they're trying to offer people golden visas because their economy's not in the right place.
Yeah.
Go to Belgium, the stamp duty is 27% or something ridiculous. Don't quote me on that, but it's in the 20%. And then you look at places like Dubai, right? And now you get the question a lot. People go, look, should I go and put my money over there? It seems like it's booming. Even Saudi, some places like that.
Of course.
What we always find, and look, we look at that market regularly. We're out there a lot. I'm out there a lot. And there's a couple of really big fundamental problems with other markets. Number one in Dubai is there's no central data point, right? Okay. So over here we've got Office of National Statistics. We've got other sort of culminations of where we can see the numbers and government sort of centralised numbers, so we know exactly what the market's doing day by day. The problem in places like Dubai is there's no centralised numbers, so you can be told 18% in terms of your growth over the next 2-3 years, but there's nothing really to base that on.
Yeah. And
also in the UK, as much as current government, everyone has their opinion on them. I'm not going to give you mine, but
no, this is not a politics podcast.
No, I'll stay away from that. Legislation doesn't change that much here.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get fundamental changes, you're not going to get massive peaks and massive troughs. So you're not going to get that uncertainty like you've seen in places like Turkey recently, where their money's devalued literally overnight and the places are worthless. You don't get that over in the UK market. So. UK's, especially if you're an unseasoned investor, the UK is 100% the place to invest.
Yeah.
It's the safest. The legal system is designed to help you. So especially if you're first time into the market, even second time into the market, you're covered, right? The legal system will, they back you. If that makes sense, so you're not left on your rear. Yeah,
cool. Stability, and also we've got a lot of evidence to back it up, right? It's not just
correct. Yeah, exactly.
Of course. Okay, so a massive fear factor. We get taken by surprise occasionally by this. Interest rates, Ben. So, where do you think interest rates are going to go? Your personal opinion, but also from what we've sort of seen coming out lately.
Yeah, it's a hot topic, right? And again, everyone is entitled to their opinion. Yeah. Mine's going to be potentially slightly different from everyone else's.
Go on,
I think that what we're seeing in the news and sort of predictions is they're not going to change a lot. They aren't going to change huge amounts, in my opinion. You're not going to go back to the golden days, 4 or 5 years ago when they were like 1% or 0.5%.
We'd love for that to happen.
You'd be buying property left, right, and centre, right? It's not going to go back to that. The reality is the banks weren't making enough money off of it, and it just doesn't make sense financially. However, they're not going to stay where they are. They are, as we've seen, incremental drops, right? Yeah. I think the Times said the other day that there's going to be 4 more drops this year. I think they're a little bit ambitious with that, personally. But then we're seeing good stuff. We're seeing good stuff in terms of the swap rates. Yeah. So one of my guys who works for me on my team, one of their clients was offered 3.8% on a buy-to-let mortgage the other day.
Okay.
That's pretty good, especially from a property in an investment area in Manchester, 25% deposit, all the stuff that you should be getting late 4s, early 5%.
Yeah.
It's not the case. So, yeah, I think we're seeing confidence in lenders, which is really good. I think that's the sort of the main sticking point, I think, when it comes to the money is how confident are lenders in the market. Yeah. Now, they always get a little bit twitchy when there's a rate review coming up. So they will always just sort of cover themselves off a little bit just in case anything changes that's not in their favour. And don't forget, of course, banks want to make money as well, right?
Yeah, no,
so they're gonna try and charge you as much as possible. As you would as well, right?
Yeah,
if you're lending someone
business, right?
if you're lending someone 150 grand, you're gonna want to make something from it. But they're not going to be high. They're not going to be. We're not in a position now where we're looking at 6.5%, 7% interest rates. Those days are gone. So by the end of the year, my prediction, don't hold me to this, is.
Well, if you're right.
Yeah. Well, yes. Write this down. 4%. I reckon the base rate will get to by the end of the year. I don't think it will dip under. But then on the same breath, if we're getting swap rates now at late threes, that you could potentially go and get early threes, maybe late twos if you're lucky on a buy-to-let mortgage.
Okay.
So yields will be strong.
I'll watch this at the end of the year and then come back and thank you, hopefully. So a bit of a mantra in our office at the minute, a phrase that we often use, stamp duty.
Yes.
For those who are currently concerned about, the surge charge and stamp duty and so on, what do you have to say about that? Should they be concerned, or, what can they expect? Yeah,
it's not ideal, right? It's as soon as we're the same as everyone else in the office, right? As soon as you hear anything that you think, this is going to be painful, then you suddenly think you have 2 minutes of, okay, well, is this going to be a game changer or not?
Yes.
It never is. It never is. Nothing is ever going to be dramatic enough to stop the property market working, because let's be honest, again, not going to get too deep into the old political side of things, but the government needs the property market to push on.
Of course.
If they stagnate the property market, they lose a massive amount of income. So from their side of things, they don't want to dampen the market. Yeah. Was it ideal that they put stamp duty up in October and then it's going up again in April? No, of course it's not. But in the same breath, if you're clever and you use a decent brokerage, I'm just throwing that out there, decent agency, they'll advise you. We will obviously advise you to structure it in the best way physically possible. Yep. The second part of that is, if you go and buy something that's below market value, that 5 to 8, even if you're buying something 300 grand plus, you could be looking at 10% in terms of stamp duty. It's a lot of money, but if you're buying something 10% below market value, it's problem solved straight away.
When matches out, balances out.
Exactly. You'll easily make that back in the first 6 months to a year, worst case scenario. So no, I don't think it's a problem. This property isn't a short-term fix. Of course. So you've always got to be looking at 5 to 7 years.
A sacrifice worth having or worth making if you're investing for the right reasons.
100%. Okay. Yeah, you're totally right.
Well, not only do we sell property, we also buy the property that we sell. I guess, you can say that we are sort of property tycoons ourselves in the office.
Try to be.
Yeah. So, Ben, what would you say, what should the next generation of investors like ourselves do differently?
I think it's a really good question. I think what the previous generation, my parents, that sort of age, and even, me to a certain degree, we assumed that everyone wants a house to live in. Yeah. Right, is the first thing. Also, property against wages back then was a completely different set of scenarios. So the wages, the average wage and the average property price were a lot closer together than they are now. Yeah. So a lot of people made a lot of money with their own homes, right? It wasn't not a lot of people really invested into property, stupidly really, because it was like golden era, right? Yeah. So a lot of people made a lot of money, but in their own homes, sold those properties off, went and bought something out in the countryside, made the money, bought cheaper, and kept what was left. Those days are different. It's not the same now. Houses aren't an area where we see massive growth these days. Cities are much more population heavy. Yeah. So someone said to me the other day, they went, it was bizarre. They said to me, they'd been somewhere and they really liked the area, and they was like, I really want to invest here because it's quiet. Yeah. It's completely the wrong attitude, honestly. So you can't write it sometimes.
It's like probably the last thing you want to hear.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I want to invest somewhere there was no people. Yeah, that's going to rent out.
You want an empty property then?
Yeah, exactly. So those days are gone. So what we're finding is the cities are getting bigger. Right? You've only got to take a look at Manchester or Birmingham or any of these big cities. Liverpool's population increase at the minute is 5,000 people a year.
It's ridiculous.
Like, that's just the metropolitan area. Yeah. Right? It's insane. I don't know how they think that they're going to be able to build that many properties in a year to sort out the population increase. It's impossible. You can't do it. So the most amount of money to be made is now in the cities. It's not in the suburbs. It's not in the commuter belts. No. People used to drive to work from the outside of cities into places like London. Yeah. You look at places like Chingford, Brentwood, these types of places in London, and over the last sort of 20 years, even close by to us in Canary Wharf, fantastic places to invest. Like, they were phenomenal. But the market's changed. So what you need to do now is buy where people want to be.
Yeah.
Especially the rental market, which is young working professionals. So you need to be in the cities. And a lot of people are told by their parents, this is how I made money, so this is how you're going to make money. But it doesn't work like that.
No, you've got to break through, learn it, with the current market trends and so on.
Of course, 100%.
Okay, so kind of, I guess these two questions are sort of linked in a way. We obviously didn't get to where we are, and nor does anyone by luck. We've made countless mistakes, learned the hard way, trial and error. Yeah. So what would you say are sort of repetitive mistakes that investors are currently doing?
Jesus. There's some bad ones out there as well, right? There's... I was
going to say, you've probably got a list.
Yeah. I mean, we've made the mistakes, right?
Yep.
Just don't do it yourselves. It's a terrible idea.
Learn from us, guys.
Yeah. There's a lot of... I wouldn't say scams. Scams is the wrong word. There's a lot of offers out there, and it's the same with any industry, right? It's like, if something's too good to be true, probably is. What I've been telling clients recently is most of property and buying property is common sense.
Yes.
It's just whether or not you've got the information to make the adjustments in your head, right? So you get things like assisted living, right, for example, that guarantee you 10% for 25 years. I mean, you've only got to look at that just from the outset and think, it's probably not the best thing to do.
Yeah.
There's no shortcuts. You got things like rent to rents. But they work, right? Yeah. Rent to rents work. Then if you're in a good area, they work all right. But you've got to think about who's benefiting from that relationship, right? So you've got the landlord who owns the property.
Yeah.
Their property's growing in value, and they're getting a guaranteed income off of you every single month. You're paying £1,000, £2,000, £3,000 a month to that landlord for that property. And then you've got you. You've got to come up with £1,000, £2,000, £3,000 every month, and then make another £2,000 a month on top of that to then make any money.
Yeah,
now, if you don't make any money, still got the bills to pay. So who's the one winning in that relationship?
The landlord. Exactly.
So why be the person that does?
Yeah, why be their guinea pig, basically?
Exactly. Yeah. What's the point? You might as well go make the money yourself. So if you can't and you've got no capital at all, you haven't got a lot of choice. But there are other ways, there are easier ways to get into it. But there's no quick wins in property.
Of course, long term investment. So what would you say are some major pitfalls in the investment industry that you should look out for, so you don't kind of fall into those sort of schemes?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing huge, right? It's very unlikely unless if you don't do your research, you're not given the right guidance, you're not given the right advice. There is the opportunity to come unstuck.
Yeah,
it's not a perfect world. However, it's not like the stock market. Property is never going to be valued at zero. So it's not like you're gonna, you're up against it in terms of danger. It's not really something you know. Could you make a lot less than what than what you should be making? Yeah, 100%. Things like buying a property at auction. No. Right, you could be
really like that phrase.
I'm not even going to get in the conversation, but you could find yourself in an endless pit. And there's a lot of companies out there that will tell you that that's a really good idea. Yeah, it is. If you've got 20 years of experience and you've got a budget of £400,000, £500,000, £600,000, yeah, fine, you can make some money. Is it easy? No, but it's possible.
Yeah.
100, 150 grand budget, no experience. What are you doing?
I know, it makes me feel bad. Whenever I hear someone who's not experienced and they get really excited about an auction, I'm thinking, oh gosh. Yeah. But it's but again, back to the education, right? You've got to educate them, nurture them, and help them.
Exactly, and it comes down to dealing with an agency. Like, if you've not done this before, even if you've got some experience and not maximised it, go and speak to someone. Yeah. Obviously, I want it to be us, right? Of course I do. If it's not us, find someone reputable, find someone that you can trust. Yeah. That's going to give you the right advice. That's the right advice for you, not just what they think is the best thing to do, but something that actually fits what you want and what you want to do long term. Because there's loads of options out there.
No, 100%. Now, Ben, we talk to not only first-time buyers and first-time investors, we talk to people who have not necessarily built up portfolios only with us, but they've also got, a substantial portfolio behind them. So how would you advise, or how would you say, such client can make sure that their portfolio is up to date, or bring it up to date?
Yeah, that's a really good question. A lot of the portfolios were built, you know, even in the sort of recent history, sort of 7, 8, 9 years ago.
Yeah.
And they would have done quite well at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get too complicated, but sometimes what happens is, especially if you're in a really high regeneration area
Mm-hmm.
or an area with really high growth,
Yeah.
your yield will start to creep down.
Mm-hmm.
Reason being is, again, I'm not going to overcomplicate this, but you've got property value
Mm-hmm.
and you've got a yield,
Yes.
right, here and here. The property value will do this and the yield will come up, but it won't come up as quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So your yield will go from 8% down to 4%, you know, over 10 years,
Yeah.
something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, you've got a couple of options. You can either sell up,
Mm-hmm.
but then you've got to think about capital gains.
Okay.
And what a lot of people didn't do back then was buy through company names,
Yeah.
structure it well.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to think about that. Is the hit going to be big?
Mm-hmm.
If it is, and the property's still doing okay,
Yeah.
remortgage, release the equity,
Mm-hmm.
go and buy it, and then structure the new properties in a way where it doesn't matter so much that you've got one property that's doing 4%,
Yeah.
because over time, as you sort of expand the portfolio away from that
Mm-hmm.
particular sort of section that you've got, then you can think about selling that up.
Yeah.
You know, and then the newer properties will cover off things like your capital gains and stuff
Yeah.
like that. The really biggest thing is what a lot of people forget is yields are done on current market property value.
Yes, exactly.
So what they go is, oh, I bought the property for 150 grand 20 years ago. Yeah, you did. Congratulations, right? That you've done extremely well.
Yeah.
But your yield isn't 8, 9, 12%.
Nope.
Completely different. So your £150,000 property that's now 400
Mm-hmm.
is yield is like 2%.
Yeah.
Your money's dead. It's not working.
Might as well keep it in the bank.
Yeah, you probably do better in the bank in some
Definitely.
stages. So you need to look at what you've got, where it is,
Mm-hmm.
how it's performing, what that particular area is going to be doing over the next 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
what the yield is doing, what the property type is, who your tenants are. But again, it needs a total top to bottom refresh. So we can help with that, but there's some fundamental things that you need to have a little look at.
Amazing. Well, I think that's pretty much it for today. I hope you guys have sort of benefited from this. A lot of these questions are asked every day, but thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks, Ben, for being here today.
Nice.
Guys, join us again next week where we'll have another special guest from the Flambard Williams team where we can sort of pick their brains and hopefully you guys can learn a bit more. But for now, thank you and goodbye.